I'm Aloni Bhatt, and welcome to this special conversation on ET Campus Stars, our hunt for the brightest engineering talent. Collaborations and partnerships is how organizations today are attempting to scale and make their products and services available to a wider set of users and customers. This is true even for edtech platforms like Skill-Lync. Skill-Lync is an upskill platform for engineers that offers courses to upgrade their skills. And today I have with me the Chief Business Officer, Krishna Bandaru, to discuss how Skill-Lync is reimagining the Indian engineering ecosystem through partnerships, collaborations, and acquisitions. Krishna, welcome to Economic Times.
Thank you, Melanie, for having me here.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure for us to have you here with us, Krishna. Start by telling us a little bit about yourself, and how did you come to be at Skill-Lync, and what is it that you do here?
Great. I'm an engineer by training. Went to NIT Warangal and then did my MBA. Worked for almost 17 years in the Indian industry, primarily as a management consultant. And I ended up being a managing director with Accenture Strategy and Consulting. And during the course of my career, I interacted with a lot of Indian companies or the Indian divisions of international companies across sectors: automotive, aerospace, medical equipment, oil and gas, etc. And one common refrain from them was the lack of talent for them to scale up operations in India. And that surprised me a lot, because it's almost irony that there are 15 lakhs of engineering graduates coming out every year. And here there were companies saying that they didn't have enough talent in order to expand their operations. That actually led me to a lot of discussions. And it so happened that one of the early investors at Skill-Lync and I got into a discussion, and he introduced me to Skill-Lync. And I was really excited by the vision that Skill-Lync had in reimagining engineering education. And so here I am, and I've been with Skill-Lync now for close to 2 years.
All right, so you are the Chief Business Officer. Obviously, you interact with a whole lot of companies, who are looking for the skilled engineering talent. You said so yourself. So, tell us, what are the companies looking for when it comes to these graduates? How are the demands changed? Say from the time when you entered you started your journey as an engineer.
Great question. So I think 20 years ago, when I started off as an engineer, or 22 years ago, we were taken off the campus. So in the campus interviews, companies came and assessed us for our aptitude and communication skills. And they took us and they trained us for 4 to 6 months before becoming chargeable or before becoming productive. But right now, I think the industry doesn't have that cushion of 4 to 6 months. They want engineering talent to be trained, to be ready from day one. And for that, they require core technical and engineering skills for them to be productive from day one, right? So they want to shorten the time that is taken for a person to be chargeable or a person to be productive. So they're actually looking for demonstrated technical experience and using in tools and software that are required in the industry. And if you want me to elaborate, I could go on explaining about what in each industry wants, Melanie.
Yeah, sure. Broadly, you can talk to us about what is it that they're looking for.
Sure. I think while the larger coverage in India is about IT industry, one significant industry which is growing faster than the IT industry is the engineering services industry.
Yeah.
What do we mean by that? So I think earlier in the last 2 decades, we've had computer science engineers or IT engineers providing IT services, doing IT work. I mean, your SAPs, Javas, etc., for the rest of the world.
Right.
But what is engineering services? Engineering services is where mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, electronics engineers, and computer science engineers do hardcore engineering services work. What goes into product engineering? Just to give you an idea, overall, the global engineering and R&D spend is about 1.4 trillion.
Okay.
Right? And out of that, only 200 billion is procured from outside the home country base. The home country base is primarily being US, Germany, UK, Japan, etc. And out of those $200 billion, about $100 billion is sourced from India. Right? And this $100 billion right now has 600,000 engineers working on it. But that is the fastest growing segment at 20%. This engineering services is growing at 20%.
Wow.
And that 600,000 jobs is going to become 2.1 million jobs, right? And this is quoted by a McKinsey NASSCOM study as well. Now, this industry, what is it looking for? It is looking for mechanical engineers who have computational skills. That is, they need to know how to design an automotive vehicle, how to design aerospace components. Given that there's a whole lot of electrification that is happening, EVs that are happening, they need mechanical engineers who can design EV cars. They need electrical engineers who can simulate components, right? Who can work with computational skills like MATLAB and Simulink in order to design components. They need electronics engineers who can work on embedded systems. Like all of us, you and me, we're using a lot of products which has a lot of sensors in them, right? And those sensors have to be operated through software. The embedded software that is there in all of those sensors is what needs to be developed. So there's a huge requirement, lakhs of engineers of requirement for embedded engineers. And similarly for semiconductor industry and so on and so forth, right? That is a major chunk of engineering services, export-led industry, right? The second segment is a lot of international companies set up their engineering centers in India.
Right.
Think of Bosch, think of Continental, think of Mercedes-Benz, Daimler, Renault, Nissan. A number of these companies set up engineering centers so that they can offshore a part of their engineering work from their headquarters to India, right? Even in all of this gloom and doom about IT services downturn that's happening in the last 2-3 months, you will see a lot of announcements, right? Merrily opening up an engineering center or a Boeing opening up an engineering center in Bangalore. So I think that's a sweet spot that students need to be aware of. And for getting into these jobs, they require both their core branch knowledge. A mechanical engineer needs to be strong in his fundamentals of mechanical engineering, but he needs to know the computational tools, right, for doing analysis, for doing design in order to be attractive in this sector.
All right. Krishna, thanks very much for laying out this landscape for us. But I think skilling basically exists because you're not finding the students, the mechanical engineers who have that computational skill.
Correct.
So, there is a quantum of time that is required to make that mechanical engineer ready for the job. What is that time frame for us? And, as industry demand evolves, how do you incorporate that in your offering and, ensure that industry is getting that kind of evolved engineering pool with which they can work?
Great. So the perfect solution would be if engineering students, when they are studying engineering in their third year or final year, if they do such advanced courses that we offer, which are industry relevant, so by the time they graduate, they would be ready to be absorbed into these companies. Right? There are about 600 plus companies who interviewed the Skill-Lync students, right? Who treat us like almost like a virtual university. But most of the students currently are people who've graduated. They've graduated. Maybe they don't have a job or they don't have a great job. They want to get into core engineering, but you will see a lot of engineers working in less than 15,000 rupee per month kind of jobs in services industries, etc. But they want to get into core engineering. So there are a lot of students who join us after they finish their engineering, and then they train with us for about 8 to 10 months. We suggest 8 to 10 months. There are people who finish it in 6 months and get employed. There are people who finish it in 10 months, right? But ideally, if they could spend, because here now they spend full time, right? Because they're engineering, they're doing a job, but they spend at least 2-3 hours a day. So during engineering, if they complete these courses across 4 semesters, third year and final year, I think that would be an ideal solution, both for the industry, for the students as well.
Right. We're discussing how Skill-Lync is reimagining the Indian engineering ecosystem through partnerships and collaborations. So talk to us about the depth of your partner network, both perhaps on the teaching side and also in terms of the companies where you place students. You did hint, that there are about 600 companies, you said, that treat you as a virtual university. Also talk to us about any government partnerships that you might have.
Great. Let me start with the company partnerships first, because the reason why SkillLync is different and how it is able to bridge the gap is because we are so well connected with the industry that we are fine-tuning our curriculum every day based on the inputs that we get, right? So the 600 plus companies belong to, I would say, 4 or 5 sectors. The first sector, as I explained, is the engineering services sector, which is huge, which is a volume employer, which is very similar to IT services. There are companies which are GCCs, what we call, or the global innovation centers or global capability centers, which are there with us. And then there are Indian OEMs. Then there are IT services and IT analytics companies, which source from us. There are a lot of tier 1 companies, automotive tier 1 suppliers or aerospace tier 1 suppliers who are there with us, right? That is one side of the network. And in fact, some of these companies also use our services for upskilling their own employees, right? So you have Daimler, you have Renault-Nissan, you have Bosch, you have Continental, you have Motherson Sumi, you have Foratia. So both MNCs as well as Indian services players, Tata Elxsi, Tata Technologies, they use our content for upskilling their existing employees, right? That means through that connect, what we get is what does the industry want from a 5-year experienced engineer in the future? So that curriculum that flows back into our curriculum for our fresh engineers, right? So that's the feedback loop that we maintain. Now, on the teaching side, right, we understand that this curriculum needs to be world class. So we have about 1,200 plus industry experts across the globe. So if an electric vehicle course is being designed, it is actually being designed by a PhD or a double master's who is working in an electric vehicle company, right? Similarly for autonomous vehicles. So we curate the course content, and then we have about 300 plus full-time trainers who are with us, who impart this education to the students. That is as far as the partnerships are concerned, both on the course side and as well as on the recruitment as well upskilling side. On the government side, there's a very interesting phenomenon. I think all of us know that if you have to impart education at scale, we need to include the government. We've partnered with the Tamil Nadu government. They've been very progressive in thinking about their engineering students. And they've given us a paid assignment to upskill 17,000 students who are studying their final year of engineering, mechanical and electrical students, right? What they said is, we like your content, right? Go out there to the colleges, teach them either virtually and in person, make them do practical stuff, application oriented stuff, right? And they've made it as a compulsory credit course, right? So it counts in their credits. So now we finished training about 10,000 students, and we are waiting for our next phase to begin. And yeah, and we are in talks with other governments also, but Tamil Nadu government has been a huge encouragement for us.
When did you begin this, Krishna? And what's the impact that you see so far? In the 10,000 odd students you say, who have been taking these courses that you have to.
Right. So normally in our student pool, about 80% of people who graduate through our coursework get placed within 2 months. That is, get into core engineering careers within 2 months, right? Now, with the Tamil Nadu government college pool, where we've trained both faculty and students, these 10,000 students are now finishing their final year. They're in their final semester, or there are some colleges where they're still doing their 7th semester, etc. Right? So we are going to provide them, push them into our career services pool, where we will actually provide even career services in order to get them employed.
Placed. Yeah. Okay. All right. And we wish you success with that. I want to talk about Creo, which you acquired, which is an experiential learning platform for tech careers. You acquired that in November of 2022. Am I correct?
That's right.
So how has it helped drive the overall value for the company, and also if you could give us some numbers in terms of that.
Sure. So Cryo is a very interesting acquisition. I think in all our business school studies, we actually read that mergers and acquisition rarely succeed. But Cryo has actually increased their revenue by 3 times after we acquired them on a monthly revenue basis, right? And it's almost 20% of our overall revenues at this point of time. Now, what does Cryo do very, very differently? So whatever we are doing in mechanical engineering, Cryo does it very well in computer science engineering by making students work in a live computing environment.
Okay.
That is, all students do projects in a computing environment and are provided live support. Of course, one part of the difference is a lot of Cryo's customers are even existing employees of companies. That is, they're in their first job, but they want to get into in computer science. There are various ladders, right? I mean, if you're working in an IT services company, you could be earning 3-4 lakhs, but if you move to a product company, you could make 10-12 lakhs. That is the shift that Cryo enables for existing employees, and about 20-30% are also a lot of freshers from tier 1 institutes. There are some tier 1 institutes who want to get into product based jobs. That's what they do, and they follow a very similar time period, about 6 to 8 months, and where they graduate students, and their placement rates are also very similar, about 80%.
Okay. All right. So this is my final question to you, Krishna. In terms of growth, what's your outlook? What's the plan to expand to other geographies? If you could, share some things with us. Also, future plans for, other partnerships, collaborations, and any other acquisitions that you might be considering.
Sure. Maybe let me just break the question into multiple parts. So the first thing is, I think India itself, with about 60 lakhs of engineers studying at any point of time or having recently graduated, I think we're not even a speck right now. I think there's something much more to do in India itself. I think we have a very strong presence in some geographies within India, maybe the south and the west. We would like to increase our presence in both in the north and the east overall, while we have students, but we would like to further deepen our presence. Number two is expanding our coursework, right? Right now, we've introduced coursework in 5G telecom, and all of us read about 5G every day in the newspapers. It requires a humongous workforce, right? 5G. And we're also looking at medical equipment. Everybody, during COVID, we saw that we need to have a strong medical equipment industry in India to avert such health crisis. So we've partnered with the medical technology zones to introduce medtech kind of coursework. So we want that to expand to biomedical students as well. A sector maybe which is not talked about in the same breath as mechanical and electrical engineering, but there is biomedical engineering out there as well. That is something that we want to do. We also want to expand our coursework for the 0 to 2 years of work experience, people who are already doing their jobs, but who want to further their careers. Let's say people want to get into autonomous vehicles, who want to get into electric vehicles and all of that stuff. That is one, as far as India is concerned. We are also in initial discussions with the state government where there are ITIs and polytechnic institutes where people get diplomas and then join engineering, right? I think there's a requirement to transform the curriculum there as well. We're looking at that. As our first foray into US, we've launched EV repair and maintenance coursework with community colleges in Florida in partnerships with Vadvani Foundation. And that is our first step. We are looking, with the help of Vadvani Foundation, we are looking actually at even South America, where they do a lot of work in the developing countries. That is another piece. We're looking at US and Germany for corporate upskilling. That is, the number of companies who buy upskilling services from us, these are international companies, they have their headquarters in US and Germany. We're doing that. We are approaching them now. These are the plans that we have for both international expansion and course expansion. So for us, acquisitions are filling in, like Cryo was a very neatly tuck-in acquisition, which was computer science, a growing field, and looking at and us grabbing a share of that market as well. We are looking wherever the consumer segment that we want to get into and the geography that we want to get into, right? Whether it is B2C or B2B, we are looking at people who can plug in the gap from a capability point of view. not from a market reach point of view, right? A capability point of view. Those are the kind of acquisitions that we would love to look at. And we keep ourselves open to those tuck-in kind of acquisitions.
And Krishna, we wish you all the very best with it, with your plans for growth, expanding your services, and really, sort of reimagining, as you put it right at the beginning, engineering education for students, not just in India, but, extend the benefits of it to as many geographies as possible. Krishna Bandaru, thank you so very much for speaking to us today and for your time.
Thanks, Melanie, for having me on this. Thank you.